Well, my name is Mr. Delay, and welcome back to the vlog.
Hey, listen!
I get stoned.
Get nerdy with me.
Bring to Middle Earth, do you speak my language? Your elf ears don't need explaining.
Get nerdy with me.
You name all 12 of the darks, I can't resist that. And what's the core in your wand? I think that ours match.
Talk nerdy to me. Talk nerdy to me.
Well, it's been a bit of a hop, skip, and a jump to get here. My desktop is still offline, but I managed to find my old intro, and I managed to figure out that I can still do the editing on my laptop with the nice camera files. So for now, we're good. We've missed a few things, so I did some of the poems. I want to start fresh this week with the poem I was supposed to read on Friday. And the poem I was supposed to read on Friday is a poem by a man named Langston Hughes. And Langston Hughes is one of the premier people in literature. And I know I keep saying that for every poet that I read, but Langston Hughes is one of them. And his craft of word, his craft of wit, his craft of language and of words is incredible. And he spoke to an idea of the civil rights movement in previous years, and the conversations he was having were multi-layered. We can look back now on Langston Hughes, and we can identify, we can explicate, we can do all the things we do as literacy people. But at the time, he was elevating the game beyond any measure, which I think is brilliant. So Langston Hughes, the poem I Too, and I will read it and then we'll talk about it for just a moment. Langston Hughes, I Too. I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen, then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I, too, am America. So in case you are not particularly picking up on Langston Hughes' writing here, Langston Hughes is writing about the African Americans in the United States of America at the time of the writing of this poem, and the idea of an equal seat at the table, and that there was a horrifying inequality and inequity and all of the words that you could come up with for that. And he was writing that soon that will change, and that he knows his value, he knows who he is and what he is deserving of when it came to his rights as a human being, and that the false assumption of his skin color as a denotation of his value would soon be laughed out. It's a powerful poem, and a lot of Langston Hughes' writing, all of it in fact, is powerful, and I would encourage you to look into his story, look into his writings, look into his impact on history, and the power of his words and his meaning behind them. It's a pretty incredible story. So Langston Hughes, I Too America, is your poem for the day. Now, writing stuff is also my jam, even though I only teach literacy right now at the middle school. Writing is my jam. I've been writing for a very long time. Your writing prompt today is 5 things you see out the nearest window. What I'm going to do is I went ahead and took some pictures out my window, and I'm going to give us 2 minutes, okay? And I'm going to show you what's outside my window as I write, and then I will come back to it and share with you what I wrote based upon what I saw. So it says 5 things you see out the nearest window. Your time starts now. Awesome. Hopefully you got some great stuff. Okay, so next on the list is the first read of our latest story, which is Gary Soto's 7th Grade. And I picked this story for a couple of reasons. Number one, it is absolutely a reflection of a lot of our experiences in middle school, and especially in the 6th, 7th, and even sometimes the 8th grade. So it's not like it's a 7th grade experience, but it's something that we've all gone through in one way or another through our experiences in middle school. And Gary Soto absolutely nails it here with it's pretty awesome what he does. So I'm going to read it I'm going to record it on podcast, like on an actual, like reading to you versus reading to you on video, and I'll splice it in here. And I want you kind of to listen, but also read and hear and listen for things that are implicit, that are the stuff that we need to interpret and go, what's going on here? And the explicit, so the stuff that's like, oh, well, I know exactly what that is. He's just saying this. This is black and white. So there's a difference between explicit and implicit, and I really want us to explore that. And so here we go. 7th Grade by Gary Soto. On the first day of school, Victor stood in line half an hour before he came to the wobbly card table. He was handed a packet of papers and a computer card on which he listed his one elective, French. He already spoke Spanish and English, but he thought someday he might travel to France, where it was cool. Not like Fresno, where summer days reached 110 degrees in the shade. There were rivers in France, and huge churches, and fair-skinned people everywhere, the way there were brown people all around Victor. Besides, Teresa, a girl he liked since they were in catechism class at St. Teresa's, was taking French too. With any luck, they would be in the same class. Teresa is gonna be my girl this year, he promised himself as he left the gym full of students in their new fall clothes. She was cute, and good in math, too, Victor thought as he walked down the hall to his homeroom. He ran into his friend, Michael Torres, by the water fountain that never turned off. They shook hands, Raza style, and jerked their heads at one another in saludo de vato. How come you're making a face? Asked Victor. I ain't making a face, essay. This is my face, Michael said. His face changed during the summer. He had read a GQ magazine that his older brother had borrowed from the bookmobile and noticed that the male models all had the same look on their faces. They would stand, one arm around a beautiful woman, and scowl. They would sit at the pool, their rippled stomachs dark with shadow, and scowl. They would sit at dinner tables, cool drinks in their hands, and scowl. I think it works, Michael said. He scowled and let his upper lip quiver. His teeth showed along with the ferocity of his soul. Belinda Reyes walked by a while ago and looked at me, he said. Victor didn't say anything, although he thought his friend looked pretty strange. They talked about recent movies, baseball and their parents, and the horrors of picking grapes in order to buy their fall clothes. Picking grapes was like living in Siberia, except hot and more boring. What classes are you taking? Michael said, scowling. French. How about you? Spanish. I ain't so good at it, even if I'm Mexican. I'm not either, but I'm better at it than math, that's for sure. A teeny 3-beat bell propelled students to their homerooms. The two friends socked each other in the arm and went their ways. Victor thinking, man, that's weird. Michael thinks making a face makes him handsome. On his way to homeroom, Victor tried a scowl. He felt foolish until out of the corner of his eye he saw a girl looking at him. He thought, maybe it does work. He scowled with a greater conviction. In the homeroom, roll was taken, emergency cards were passed out, and they were given a bulletin to take home to their parents. The principal, Mr. Belton, spoke over the crackling loudspeaker, welcoming the students to a new year, new experiences, and new friendships. The students squirmed in their chairs and ignored him. They were anxious to go to first period. Victor sat calmly thinking of Teresa, who sat 2 rows away reading a paperback novel. This would be his lucky year. She was in his homeroom and would probably be in his English and math classes, and of course, French. The bell rang for first period, and the students herded noisily through the door. Only Teresa lingered, talking with the homeroom teacher. So you think I should talk to Mrs. Gaines? She asked the teacher. She would know about ballet. She would be a good bet, the teacher said, then added, or the gym teacher, Mrs. Garza. Victor lingered, keeping his head down and staring at his desk. He wanted to leave when she did so he could bump into her and say something clever. He watched her on the sly. As she turned to leave, he stood up and hurried to the door, where he managed to catch her eye. She smiled and said, "Hi, Victor." He smiled back and said, "Yeah, that's me." His brown face blushed. Why hadn't he said, "Hi, Teresa," or "How was your summer?" or something nice? As Teresa walked down the hall, Victor walked the other way, looking back, admiring how gracefully she walked, one foot in front of the other. So much for being in the same class, he thought. As he trudged to English, he practiced scowling. In English, they reviewed parts of the speech. Mr. Lucas, a portly man, waddled down the aisle, asking, "What is a noun?" "A person, place, or thing," said the class in unison. "Yes. Now somebody give me an example of a person. You, Victor Rodriguez." "Teresa," Victor said automatically. Some of the girls giggled. They knew he had a crush on Teresa. He felt himself blushing again. "Correct," Mr. Lucas said. "Now provide me with a place." Mr. Lucas called on a freckled kid who answered, "Teresa's house with a kitchen full of big brothers." After English, Victor had math, his weakest subject. He sat in the back by the window, hoping he would not be called on. Victor understood most of the problems, but some of the stuff looked like the teacher made it up as she went along. It was confusing, like the inside of a watch. After math, he had a 15-minute break, then social studies, and finally lunch. He bought a tuna casserole with buttered rolls, some fruit cocktail, and milk. He sat with Michael, who practiced scowling between bites. Girls walked by and looked at him. "See what I mean, Vic?" Michael scowled. "They love it." "Yeah, I guess so." They ate slowly, Victor scanning the horizon for a glimpse of Teresa. He didn't see her. She must have brought lunch, he thought, and is eating outside. Victor scraped his plate and left Michael, who was busy scowling at a girl 2 tables away. The small, triangle-shaped campus bustled with students talking about their new classes. Everyone was in a sunny mood. Victor hurried to the bag lunch area, where he sat down and opened his math book. He moved his lips as if he was reading, but his mind was somewhere else. He raised his eyes slowly and looked around. No Teresa. He lowered his eyes, pretending to study, then looked slowly to the left. No Teresa. He turned a page in the book and stared at some math problems that scared him because he knew he would have to do them eventually. He looked to the right. Still no sign of her. He stretched out lazily in an attempt to disguise his snooping. Then he saw her. She was sitting with a girlfriend under a plum tree. Victor moved to a table near her and daydreamed about taking her to a movie. When a bell sounded, Teresa looked up and their eyes met. She smiled sweetly and gathered her books. Her next class was French, same as Victor's. They were among the last students to arrive in class, so all the good desks in the back had already been taken. Victor was forced to sit near the front, a few desks away from Teresa, while Mr. Bueller wrote French words on a chalkboard. The bell rang, and Mr. Bueller wiped his hands, turned to the class, and said, "Bonjour." "Bonjour," braved a few students. "Bonjour," Victor whispered. He wondered if Teresa had heard him. Mr. Bueller said that if the students studied hard, at the end of the year they could go to France and be understood by the populace. One kid raised his hand and said, "What's a populace?" The people of France." Mr. Bueller asked if anyone knew French. Victor raised his hand, wanting to impress Teresa. The teacher beamed and said, "Très bien, parlez-vous François?" Victor didn't know what to say. The teacher wet his lips and asked something else in French. The room grew silent. Victor felt all eyes staring at him. He tried to bluff his way out by making noises that sounded French. "Lama va milan grandma," he said uncertainly. Mr. Bueller wrinkled his face in curiosity, asked him to speak up. Great rose bushes of red bloomed on Victor's cheeks. A river of nervous sweat ran down his palms. He felt awful. Teresa sat a few desks away, no doubt thinking he was a fool. Without looking at Mr. Bueller, Victor mumbled, "Frenchy, oh, oui, G in September." Mr. Bueller asked Victor to repeat what he said. "Frenchy, oh, oui, G in September," Victor repeated. Mr. Bueller understood that the boy didn't know French and turned away. He walked to the blackboard and pointed to the words on the board with his steel-edged ruler. "Les bateaux," he sang. "Les bateaux," the students repeated. "Les bateaux est Australia," he sang. "La bateau est Léon." Victor was too weak from failure to join the class. He stared at the board and wished he had taken Spanish, not French. Better yet, he wished he could start his life over. He had never been so embarrassed. He bit his thumb until he tore off a sliver of skin. The bell sounded for fifth period, and Victor shot out of the room, avoiding the stares of the other kids, but had to return for his math book. He looked sheepishly at the teacher, who was erasing the board, then widened his eyes in terror as Teresa, who stood in front of him. "I didn't know you knew French," she said. "That was good." Mr. Bueller looked at Victor, and Victor looked back. "Oh, please don't say anything," Victor pleaded with his eyes. "I'll wash your car, mow your lawn, walk your dog, anything. I'll be your best student, and I'll clean your erasers after school. Just don't say anything." Mr. Bueller shuffled through the papers on his desk. He smiled and hummed as he sat down to work. He remembered his college years when he dated a girlfriend in borrowed cars. She thought he was rich because every time he picked her up, he had a different car. It was fun until he had spent all his money on her and had to write home to his parents because he was broke. Victor couldn't stand to look at Teresa. He was sweaty with shame. "Yeah, well, I picked up a few things for movies and books and stuff like that." They left the class together. Teresa asked him if he would help her with her French. "Sure, any time." "I won't be bothering you, will I?" Oh no, I like being bothered." "Bonjour," Teresa said, leaving him outside her next class. She smiled and pushed wisps of hair from her face. "Yeah, right, bonjour," Victor said. He turned and headed to his class. The rosebuds of shame on his face had become bouquets of love. Teresa is a great girl, he thought. And Mr. Bueller, he's a good guy. He raced to Metal Shop. After Metal Shop, there was biology, and after biology, a long sprint to the public library where he checked out 3 French. So hopefully you enjoyed that story. It's a lot of fun. I get a kick out of it. It's kind of one of my favorite things. So there's also an assignment. There's a couple of assignments for this week that you're kind of going to be wondering about. First is there's the first read for 7th grade, which is just basically a Google form, and you answer questions and complete sentences with evidence and information and stuff like that from the story you just read. And you might want to read it a couple times to make sure you kind of got understanding. And it's open book. Like, you can go back and look at the document and go, oh, yeah, no, I found that there. The other thing is a question that it asks you, and that question that it asks you, some people go to great lengths to impress those who are important to them. In 7th grade, Victor acts in a way that ranges from silly to downright embarrassing in an attempt to impress Teresa. What do you do to try to make an impression on others? Answer in complete and sentences. So this is where you get to kind of reflect on the story's events, take what occurred and what you know to have occurred, and then reflect on it within yourself. Take your experiences and the experiences of the story, boom, put them together and give me a constructed response that tells us, hey, here's what I got out of it, and here's what happened in my life when I tried to impress someone. We've all tried to do it in big or small ways. It doesn't have to be like a massive epic story of, It can just be like, yeah, I tried to impress this guy or this girl, or I tried to impress this family member of mine, or I tried to impress this famous person, or whatever. It can just be a story of that. The last thing that you have on the docket, there's only 3 assignments this week because it's a short week. It's from Tuesday to Friday because, of course, we had last Friday off, and I'm starting this stuff today. I didn't want to overwhelm you this week. So your first read, obviously, your answer prompt, and then there's this thing called Good Things. John Krasinski, who is the star of The Office, one of the many stars of The Office, created this thing where he's doing it about once a week or so, and it's called Some Good Things. And it's basically a news broadcast that he's editing and creating out of his home with low-end graphics. And the challenge that I have for you is by Friday that you would record, at minimum, like a minute-long Some Good Things broadcast about stuff that you've seen in your family, your life, yourself, or stuff you've read on the news, or stuff you've seen that's good, people doing good things. Again, our idea behind Good Things is to share and to kind of brighten our day and say, you know what, things are kind of dark sometimes, hour by hour, day by day, but there's some good things in this world. So your challenge, and my challenge, which I will reveal to you probably around Wednesday to Thursday-ish, my own broadcast of Some Good Things. So look forward to that. If you have questions, you know where to find me. Hangouts, Google, Gmail, all that kind of stuff. You know where to reach me if you have questions. We have our classroom meetings that are happening all this week, and so they're Monday and Tuesdays. Today, block 4 and 5, you're up. I put announcements on Google Classroom, all that good stuff. I'm not able to stream currently because the desktop's down, so hopefully, fingers crossed, that will be resolved soon, and I can be back to streaming with you. Well, that's all I have for now. Yeah, there's the bell, and that signals the end of class. My name is Mr. Delay. it's been really cool to be back and doing this in this seat in the classroom. My hope is that you have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and know that you are loved. We'll see you in the next one.